Guys, today's video is all about metal tones, and we're gonna dive deep into the EQ, the settings, the two different amplifiers that I use, and the recording process that I use to record my latest album, Overcometh. I want to say a quick thank you to everyone who has supported and continues to support that album. Really appreciate you guys. By the way, that was released December 1st, 2023. And real quick, there are a couple of reasons why I'm doing this video. First of all, a lot of you have been asking me about the lead and the rhythm tones. By the way, I used two different amps for these. We're going to cover both, and I recorded these a little differently as well. The second reason is, hey, we love to talk about metal tones, and I hope that I can share some tips and just some different perspectives, and that might help you as well. On that note, the pun was intended, hang around till the end of the video for some Tone Talk Extra. We're going to start with what I use for the guitar solos. So the amplifier is actually one of these little amps in a box, or amp pedals. This is the Blackstar Amped 3, and it's actually a real amplifier. Unlike some of the other amp pedals, this is actually a 100-watt amp, but you can also dial this down to 20 watts and even down to 1 watt. And of course, since it's a real amplifier, you can connect this directly to a cabinet. However, that's not what I did in this case. I actually connected this directly to my interface and just recorded direct using the Blackstar Cab Rig software. Before we talk about that, let's go over the settings real quick. Now, I'm not going to go over all the features this product offers because I have that in another video. I'll put a link to that video in the description here, but I used, of course, their overdrive channel here, and as you can see, there's OD1, OD2. Of course, we've got it on the highest gain there. I've got a little bit of reverb on here, not a ton. Now, if we go over to our EQ, my bass for leads is actually boosted just a little. I've got my mids and treble boosted a little. And this ISF setting, I've got that leaning towards the British side. That's something that Blackstar offers on a lot of their amplifiers here. Now, this amplifier also gives you the option to use a different response. I've got mine set on the EL34, and the power in this case doesn't really matter because, again, I didn't have this running through a cab. I had this running directly through my interface. Now, for my leads, I've got the gain cranked all the way up here. You see a boost function on here, but I'm actually not using the boost. If we go down here, you can see the boost is off. I'm actually using something else. I'll share that in a second. Again, got a little reverb on this. They have a light and dark. I'm using the light. My presence is boosted just a bit. Now, you just saw that the boost, this Amped 3 does have a boost on it, but I didn't use that. I actually like the boost that I'm using a little better here, and that's the MXR Classic Distortion pedal. I'm using that as my overdrive and or boost pedal here to be placed in front of the amp. I've got the distortion all the way down and the levels all the way up, kind of typical setting there, but that really gives me a nice tone, at least in my opinion. Now, I'm also using the MXR Smartgate noise gate. Now, I used one more effect, but that's not on this pedal board here. I actually used a delay plugin, and this is just a basic Presonus Studio One Pro delay plugin. I think it's called their beat delay. I like that delay. It sounds great for solos. Now, for the cab, or in this case, the impulse response, I'm actually using the Blackstar Cab Rig software. I've got a screenshot up here. You can see that. They give you many cabs and mic combinations and speakers to use, but I chose this Modern UK. I thought that sounded really good for this, and I've got it mic'd with their 121 sim. Now, this is what many of you have been waiting for right here. It is time to go over the rhythm metal guitar tones on the album Overcometh. I went old school on this. I just mic'd up a cab with the good old Shure SM57 microphone. So you can see I'm using the Blackstar HTV MK3 amplifier. Now, this is a 100-watt amplifier. It's powered with the EL34 tubes. It's got 3 different channels, and actually I have another video going over the specs and how to use this amplifier. I'll leave a link to that as well in the description of this video, so you guys can go check that out later along with the Amped 3 video. Now, with the the HT Venue MK3 amplifier, you do have the option to use 100 watts or go down to 10 watts. I had the setting on 100 watts because I had this cranked up quite a bit as I was recording. You can see we're starting with the volume, the presence, and the resonance. What I will say about this, I've got my presence boosted quite a bit here. The resonance knob over here, I had to actually cut this back a little bit. When I'm playing just in the studio, I've got it cranked quite a bit here to get that depth. It just sounds really good. But for recording, for the recorded tracks, I actually had it cut back to about there, a little over 5, probably around 6 there. And that just sat better in the mix with the bass and the drums and all that. I did have a little reverb on there. Now, another thing for the recorded tracks, the ISF, I normally had this turned more towards the British side of life. But for the recorded tracks, along with the mix and everything, I went back and I changed this. I cut that about to where I had the resonance of around 6 there. That just sounded better in the full mix. You know, when you're recording guitars, a lot of times, especially with a live amplifier like this, you've got to record several tracks and just see what sounds best. So I played around with this quite a bit. We can see the treble is boosted there. I had my mids slightly cut. I've got my bass almost up the middle there. Again, when I'm playing in my studio, just jamming, practicing, I've got my bass cut up quite a bit, okay, because that sounds good in the room. But the recorded tone, I actually have my bass probably right up the middle, about where you see it now. Now, you have multiple channels on this amplifier, and again, I'll have a link going over this amp into detail. I've got another video on that. That will be in the description. But I, of course, as you would expect, I use the massive gain channel here, the OD2. But as you can see, I didn't have my gain cranked up all the way. And that's because, well, we'll go over that in a second. Real quick, they have a voice switch on here. Just gives you a slightly different tone. With the voice switch on, you just get more of that metal vibe there. And guys, you'll have to pardon the dust. Again, my studio is dusty, but hey, never mind that. And I use the same pedals that I use with the Amp 3 with the Blackstar MK3 amplifier, the MXR Classic Distortion, and of course I had the MXR Smartgate as well. The Classic Distortion pedal, again, that just acts as an overdrive, just helps clean things up a bit. So with that, I actually had the gain backed off on the amplifier. And I toyed around with the two, not using the pedal with the gain all the way up on the MK3, which sounds really good, but just at the end of the day, after testing tones, it just sounded a little bit better to my ears anyway, and with a full mix, with the gain on the amp backed off a bit, I think it's around 7-ish there, and using the OD pedal in front of the amp. Now there's one more tone I need to cover real quick, and that's the clean tone for the song called The Healing 2. And I actually use this very same tone for a couple of ambient parts and 2 other songs as well. But let me cover this real quickly. So for this, I actually went back to the Amp 3 and I just used their clean channel there. Actually didn't mess with the EQ at all on the Amp 3. I kind of just left everything as is. Of course, I'm not using any gain for the clean tone here. We're just using the clean channel here. I am using their second option for the clean tone. It's the brighter option. And I'm also using just a pinch of delay, using the delay plugin that I talked about. Same plugin I use for the lead tracks, the Presonus Studio One beat delay. Now there are 2 songs that have some ambient spots in there, Your Hand I Still Hold, and then the final track called The Damned. I use the exact same clean tone for these, but I just added some really cool ambient reverb that I got from Bias FX. And I wish I could share that with you guys, but my computer, my iMac, this is an old late 2013, it literally crashed after I finished this album. Some of you know I just got back from Thailand and it was kind of going downhill before then. But when we got back, I started messing with it, trying to get it going, and it just completely fell apart. So I had to restore the computer. I lost a lot of data. That's not really part of this video, but I just wanted to share that real quick. Just to say, I'm so glad that I completed my album before this whole thing happened. So very happy about that, but maybe not not so happy that it's time for a new machine. Now let's have a little tone talk, guys. I'm going to share one more recording tip, something I did that to me really makes the guitars stand out, especially the rhythms. But first, I want to thank my sponsor, Blackstar. I've been working with Blackstar for several months now. I want to thank Morgan in the marketing department, Ollie and James at Blackstar. You guys have been so kind to me. I also want to give a shout out to the folks at Amplify 11 in Clearwater, Florida for setting me up with Blackstar, for helping make this connection. So I really appreciate all of you if you're seeing this right now. Thank you so much, guys. With that, again, this whole video is based on my latest album called Overcometh. I've got links in the description of this video to go check that out, or you can just type in Jason Stallworth Overcometh and the album pops up on all major platforms. If you're watching this in December of 2023, I do have merch and CDs that's coming up and will be available in January 2024. More videos to come about the making of this album. There's a lot of stories behind how this thing came about and a lot of struggles I went through in creating this album. I'll have some videos on that coming up in the near future. My secret sauce, and it's really not secret sauce, this is what a lot of guitar players and bands do. I always record 2 rhythm guitar tracks, and I usually do this whether it's distorted or clean. I did it in both cases in the case of Overcometh, but I'll record 2 tracks, 2 separate tracks, and I'll hard pan each one. What I do real quick, guys, is I'll record one rhythm track first, okay? Record that track, then I'll pan that all the way to the left, and then I'll record a separate track. I'll go ahead and pan that separate track, that second track, to the right, and then I'll record that track as well. 2 reasons why I do this. For one, it just sounds great in the overall mix. The end product sounds amazing when you do that, in my opinion. Secondly, if you're gonna record 2 tracks like that, I like to go ahead and pan that track as soon as I record it, and then pan the new track as well, so that when I'm recording, especially if you're recording with headphones, you get the full effect, that stereo effect there. It just sounds really cool. Now, I've been asked, well, why don't you just record the track and then duplicate it and pan it? Well, all that does is just increase the volume. That really does nothing for you. The reason I do this, another reason I do this, is because you've got those subtle nuances and those subtle little differences, right, between the 2 guitars, whether they're harmonizing or whether one guitar might just be off just a hair here and there throughout the song. To me, that actually adds more life to the song. Now, you don't want them so far apart that it's like, okay, well, that one's clearly off and it sounds like you're screwing up. But the 2 minor differences of those tracks, those subtle differences, just create these beautiful nuances and, again, just brings the song to life. As far as tone and settings and all that good stuff, you guys just saw my EQ settings and gain. There's really nothing special about it. One of the biggest things that you're hearing is really the cab. So this Blackstar cab, it's the 412 here, is powered with the 7080 Celestion speakers. Now, I've never played through these speakers before, but I like them. I like them a lot, actually. I'm like, okay, this is sounding different. And that's kind of what I was going for. I wanted something that didn't sound like really anything else and didn't sound like stuff I've put out in the past. I wanted something just a little different here. But what I want to kind of go back to, guys, when it comes to tone is don't stress over it so much, guys. Please don't. I don't want to say tone doesn't matter. It matters, but it just has to sound good to you. I'm not into trying to chase after someone else's tones. Like, oh, I heard this new album, this new Megadeth, or the old Metallica, or, you know, whatever, you name it, Amon Amarth, they have some killer tones. I don't necessarily want to go after that tone, though, because that's already been done. That's them, right? A lot of your tone too, or I shouldn't say tone, but a lot of the feel and the vibe that you're gonna get, that sense of belonging, the song like just being in existence, a lot of that comes from your playing style and of course the style of the song. You could have the exact same guitar, amp, exact same settings and everything, and have this person play their style, and then this person, maybe me, maybe you or somebody else, play their style. Well, you're going to get something different. And it may not necessarily be the tone that you're hearing. I know a lot of people will argue, well, the tone is the guitar player, and they'll say, no, it's not, it's the amp, there's no difference. Here's the thing, the style of playing and the style of songwriting, that's where you get the differences from, okay? So don't worry so much about the tone as long as it sounds good to you and as long as it fits your project, your song or your album. That's what's most important. Now you can go back through this video and get a couple of little gold nuggets there. So things like bass, things like your resonance, things like even presence and those types of settings, right? Now, those can make a big difference when it comes to recording your guitar tracks. One thing I'll end with here is remember the tone you're jamming with in your bedroom or in your studio when you're just playing, alone, practicing jamming, whatever, that's going to be probably a little different than what you want for your recorded tracks. Because remember, now you're recording guitar tracks that need to fit along with the bass and the drums, and you don't want your guitar, you don't want the guitar track, you don't want those lower frequencies to overpower or take away from the frequencies that the bass guitar is supposed to cover, or the toms or the kick or whatever. So you may have to back some things off a little bit, so just remember that when you're recording your guitar. And then of course when you go back to jamming in your studio or your room, well, you can crank those levels back up. Guys, I hope this video helped you. I hope you got some value out of it. If nothing else, I hope you enjoyed just hanging out with me talking about metal tones. Oh, real quick, the guitar I use. You guys already know this, but this is kind of an important part too. So this is my Ibanez Prestige RG1570. I think it's a 2001 model. I got this from a very close friend of mine, like a brother, Tom Sherman. I bought this from him. He almost gave it away to me. Back in, I think, 2009. You've got the V8, V7, and S1 pickups here. So this is the only guitar I use for this album. That was it. And I was really happy with how this turned out. So anyway, guys, hey, give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out the links in the description of this video as well. And of course, check out my album, Overcometh. Guys, thank you so much. I'll see you on the next video. Until then, keep it metal, guys, and keep playing music.
Standing on the edge of darkness.